All right, we can get started now. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Hamerlinck.
No problem.
We have some pre-submitted questions. We have some audience to ask questions. Hopefully Zoom will post some questions in the chat. So it should be a good convo. But folks have read a little bit about you online, but if you want to start us with just a brief introduction and kind of who you are, what you do.
Sure. I always get very impressed when you all do a really thorough deep dive into my academic background. My name is Dr. Gabriella Hamerlinck. I am a teaching faculty in the Department of Geography, but I specialize in medical geography. So that is the spread of diseases and health-related issues through the population and across the landscape. But that is absolutely not my academic training. I started off college as at a very, very small school in downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota, called Augsburg College, which is now Augsburg University, where I double majored in math and biology. And then I went straight into a PhD program when I graduated into integrated biology at the University of Iowa, where I graduated with my PhD in evolutionary biology and theoretical ecology. So again, that intersection of math and biology. While I was there, I also completed a teaching certificate, which means I just took a bunch of night classes in pedagogy and how to convince undergraduate students like you that they want to learn. A lot of night classes. And then I went straight into a postdoc, which was quantitative biology education. So I trained college faculty from across the country how to bring more math into the biology curriculum at the undergraduate level. I did that for 3 years. I was based in Wisconsin. You can see a Midwest pattern starting to emerge. And then I was recruited for a postdoc here at the University of Florida, made the massive move south to the warm weather, which is really nice. I find it cold outside right now, even though I'm from Minnesota. So I did my second postdoc. A postdoc is sort of this temporary position after you finish a PhD before you move into a faculty position. I did my second postdoc here with a faculty member in the geography department, but also with the CDC Center of Excellence in Vector-Borne Diseases, which is based at the Emerging Pathogens Institute, sort of near the medical school, near the vet school. And then a couple of months into that, they asked me to apply for this faculty position, which is teaching focused. And that's what I do now since 2019.
Excellent. All right, so who wants to get us started with a question for Dr. Hamerlinck? Yeah.
I was thinking, what is a bone church?
The Bone Church is in Kutná-Hora, which is outside of Prague and in the Czech Republic. And it is really, really fascinating to me. If you ever go on vacation with me, we go to these sorts of places. It is a church that needed to downsize their land holdings a few hundred years ago, and they ended up needing to sell off a lot of their land, and so they had to rebury all of the people who have been buried there, and a lot of those victims were from the second plague pandemic, and so they hired an artist to make all of the remains, all the bones, into art fixtures in this church. So there's garlands and sculptures and crests on the walls, all made out of bones. And it sounds really morbid, but it's fascinating. So I study the plague for one of my research projects now, so I keep coming back to it.
Here's the Wikipedia picture if you want to see.
Yeah, I've been there. It's so cool. My level of enthusiasm for diseases and things like this is perhaps not what you're used to, but I think this is fascinating.
Those are all human bones.
Yes.
Decorating the church.
From the second plague pandemic, which is also known as the Black Death.
Yeah, I was gonna, I guess my question was a bit unrelated, but I saw like the work is mainly like parasitic diseases. So I guess I was gonna ask about how like COVID has kind of impacted the working through. So like being more viral, I guess it's not more of a direct impact, but also.
So when you say parasitic diseases, do you mean parasites or like a pathogen that is a parasite?
pathogen, I think.
Okay.
Pathogens.
So there's a difference between the two, which is why I asked. So I study vector-borne diseases, primarily, which means that we have an insect vector that transfers a pathogen from a host to a different host. So we need that the vector in between stem. And so I study mosquito-borne diseases, tick-borne diseases, and flea-borne diseases so far. And I'd say that COVID, beyond like the obvious impacts of not being able to go to conferences and work directly with people in person, has had no impact on my research.
Problems in a lot of places. Is there a certain area that you love doing research in?
So I don't do any research internationally. I work with international collaborators, but I just travel for fun. And I have family out of the country, so I like going there to see them. But yeah, just trying to see the world before I, have to stop.
So does it have to be insects or could it also be like animals, like that?
Vector-borne diseases are specifically vectored by some sort of insect. We usually call them arthropod-borne diseases or arboviruses if it's a viral disease. There are some animals that can transmit diseases from like that animal species to other species. We call it a spillover event. So like horses, for example, get a mosquito-borne disease called Eastern equine encephalitis, especially here in Florida, because we've got a lot of horses here. And that can spill over into people, but really it's because the people, like the people who are around the horses all the time, are in such close contact with them very frequently. Yes.
What was your driving force majoring in both math and microbiology?
So not microbiology.
Oh,
My
sorry,
school didn't have a sort of difference. We were so small that it was just biology. I did take micro, but yeah. Those two things came very easily to me, compared to like physics, which was not my strong suit. And my high school had really, really good math available to me. So I took up to Calc 2 when I was in high school, tested in a Calc 3 in college. And so it was easy, I think. And also obviously very interesting to me. I don't know if that's a great answer.
I want to say exact half you are right now, so that's why it's interesting of like knowing your like what made you go into it.
Yeah, the concepts just clicked for me. I could see a lot of connections, cross connections between the two disciplines as well, which has really helped.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of your course with like math, what made you specifically want to start this?
So here's the secret. I've never actually taken a geography class ever, like even in high school. So now I teach it, and it takes a lot of prep work in order for me to be able to teach like the GIS classes that I do. But for me, the stuff that I do now research-wise is modeling. So mathematical and statistical modeling, which is what my training is in. We just look at it with a spatial twist. So obviously now I do GIS work, which is geographic information systems. I can make the pretty maps and do the spatial statistics. And so it's just another learning process. I just took that on post PhD, postdoc.
So how did you like get interested with vector-borne diseases and start your research?
I got a job that was all about vector-borne diseases. That's how I started in them. My PhD research was in host-parasite interactions. So I studied bugs, like actual insects, and their plants. So there's a tritrophic system where there's a plant, usually a fruit tree of some sort, and then a fly that comes and parasitizes the fruit and lays their eggs into the fruit. And then they develop inside of the fruit, eventually hatch out as new flies. But the third level would be the wasps that are parasites on the flies. So they come and lay their eggs into the fly larvae that are inside of the fruit. So that tritrophic interaction is what I studied both mathematically and genetically during my PhD. So I already had some of that knowledge of host-parasite interactions. And I just moved one step further into the disease side of things.
I was just wondering, like, obviously you work very closely with insects and bugs and stuff. How much do you have to like know or understand about their biology in order to do the work?
So I know a lot of things about a very small number of species. So you can ask me almost any question about Ornithodorus snubata, which is a soft-bodied tick, and I can give you an answer. But if you ask me a question about like Ixodes scapularis, which is another species of tick, I got nothing. Like besides the basics of, hey, it's a hard-bodied tick and it transmits Lyme disease and its general geography. So that's it. So very, very deep knowledge on just a small number of species that I work with. But that came over time. It's not like a prerequisite.
We've worked with a lot of projects and just in general, met a lot of people that you're seeing so far. Is there like a piece of advice that you were given by anyone that's kind of stuck with you throughout this process?
Lots of advice has stuck with me, I think. A really big one that I continue to tell my students now, and especially my graduate students, is that you're not here in school, either at the undergraduate level or at the master's level or the PhD level. You're not here to get a degree, right? That piece of paper at the end is really exciting, but that shouldn't be your end game goal. You're here to set yourself up for the career that you want. And so taking advantage of all of the opportunities that you have to make yourself the best candidate for your dream job when you graduate or when you're taking that next step, that is why you're here. You know, courses are fine, they're fun, they can be a pain to do, but they're not that piece of paper at the end shouldn't be the overall goal. Yes. This semester, not so good on the work-life balance front, but I do make an effort. When I go home at night, it is home time. I try to not work from home anymore unless I absolutely have to. My husband and I have a deal where he sort of knows that, all right, it's finals time. You're going to have to spend a weekend grading because you have to submit grades. But other than that, like I don't work on the weekends. I don't work when I'm home. And I also do my best to make sure that my students realize that, because some professors give you like a group me that they're in and you have access to them at all points of the day. I am not that person. You can email me when you need to, and then I'll get back to you when it's my working hours. So I do try and set some boundaries, but some semesters are better than others. In grad school, there's a different set of pressures on you. But in undergrad, when I was where you are now, I was a student athlete, and so I had to be very, very conscious about time management to get things done and in on time, because there were people checking up on me with my academics to make sure that I was still eligible to play and, you know, being successful in that regard. Like we traveled every weekend for sports and different games and events and things, so had to be done. Really good time management skills, for better, for worse, I guess.
Question down there.
So would you say that you prefer like teaching or like research?
100% teaching. Yeah, I'm in a teaching position right now. So 75% of my job right now, on average, is teaching. Can go up to 100% of like, if we had a traditional 40-hour work week, talking of work-life balance, then 75% of that time is devoted to teaching, as like my contract says. And then the other 20% is service. So I sit on a lot of committees. That how we got to know each other is committee work for me. And then I have a 5% research appointment, which means that only 5% of my time is spent on research. And that's good for me. Yeah. So I'm involved with a lot of projects, but really only like 5% of my paid time is research. Yeah.
What has been your favorite thing you've researched?
That's a tough question. I like all of the things that I've researched. I think that by the time you get to the manuscript writing stage, you should probably hate the project because it's just gone on for so long to get to that point. But I think it's more about the people that I work with rather than that projects. Because all the research is interesting to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. And if I really like the people that I work with, then I'm gonna find other ways to work with them on something else.
Besides like the things you've researched on, are you like, what else are you interested in that's kind of not in that field? Or is it really like your interests lie within the field you're in?
So I also do education research, and looking at how students learn and how different structures that are in place for faculty and the training that we receive, how that impacts student learning gains and sense of belonging, faculty retention, all that stuff. So that's another aspect that's sort of adjacent to the, I don't want to call it science research because discipline-based education research is also science, but it's just sort of a different flavor. Yeah. It's like, can't really see that.
Classes that you in the future have taught, is your favorite and why?
Oh. So I've designed, and I teach 8 classes a year, and I've designed 5 new classes since I've been here, since 2019, and had to teach most of those classes in various different modalities over the pandemic and since. So I don't know if I have a favorite. There's definitely ones that are smoother, that run a little bit smoother from like how many emails I get from students every day asking questions about things. Content wise, it changes whatever's new and exciting. I teach a few survey classes, which are really fun, I think, that are like every week we focus on a different disease or set of closely related diseases. So for example, I teach a class called Peoples and Plagues, which is, and a Quest 2 class, which is called The Next Pandemic, which are both survey classes that sort of cover the wide scope of really impactful human diseases. Those are fun because they're always changing. So there's new research coming out that I get to incorporate. But again, work-life balance, I have to incorporate it into those lectures, which takes a long time.
Kind of a related question from the pre-submitted is if you could teach a course on anything, what would it be?
So I've designed this class that I've never been able to teach because of a wide variety of things. But it's called Data Maps and Deception, and it's all about numerical and mapping literacy, which doesn't sound very exciting, but it's like how to lie with maps and statistics. So if I tell you that, all right, from last year to this year, last year I had 2 students, this year I have 3 students, versus my class size this year is 150% of what it was last year. Which of those is a more impactful statement? Right? So clickbait wise, how would you present the same set of data in a way that gets more attention? And so thinking about just how you're presenting this information to change the narrative of the same data. I have the whole class developed and it's done, and I just haven't been able to teach it because it doesn't fit in my schedule, and I really want to. So if you want to all take it, then I can teach it. Yeah.
I'm actually really interested in your like time management skills. As you're playing sports, like on weekends, like how do you get it?
Oh, I definitely live a sedentary lifestyle now. I don't exercise. So don't do that. It's not good for your bones. But time management wise, I know when things need to get done. I'm super unhealthy when it comes to my baseline anxiety levels, but I'm very good under pressure with deadlines. Probably because of that anxiety. And so it's just like planning it out, right? When I was in college, it was all right, I have these assignments due on these days. I have, 4 hours in between classes, practice, and then like bedtime, a healthy bedtime. What needs to happen in those 4 hours? And I might plan it out to the half hour of, all right, I have to get this assignment done in the next half hour. Otherwise, it's just not going to get done. And that wasn't okay with me. So yeah, just prioritizing, making a plan, and then sticking to it. If you get distracted by your cell phone, don't bring your cell phone to study with you. Block off time, find a place that works for you, like a different location. So I had a study room in the athletic building that's where I would exist and live in between classes, practice, and then after practice to get everything done.
There's a question sitting in the chat from Alice. What was your motivation to teach instead of conducting research full-time?
Cool. Lots of things. So conducting research full-time means a few different things depending on where you end up at in terms of the institution type. So I never wanted to end up in an R1 institution like the University of Florida. It was never even in the cards for me. I never pursued this sort of job until my department asked me to apply for a faculty position that was teaching focused. So I always wanted to go and teach at a school that was very similar to the one that I graduated from. Very small, private liberal arts school with a really diverse student body. And that is what I had set myself up for, right? I had sought out those other opportunities to add to my CV or my resume to make me that really attractive job candidate, because that was the career that I wanted. If you end up at a research-focused institution like the University of Florida, and you are in a research-focused position, then your job is writing grants. And so as the faculty member, you don't actually get to do a lot of the research. You write the grants to get the money to pay the PhD students or the master's students to do those projects for you. So your job turns into a lot of administration. So even though we have a lot of research faculty here, the work that they're doing is not necessarily the cool research that they have proposed and they're carrying out. It's their labs that are carrying out that research. So a little bit difference of perspective there, I think, if that answers your question, Alice.
Go from another pre-submitted question from Alexander Patterson. What are some tips to avoid burnout and maintain focus?
Do things that are fun, right? Who here is pre-med or pre-health in any way, right? You have like the next 10 years of your life planned out without any breaks, I'm assuming, because I work with a lot of pre-med students. Don't do it. Take a semester to study abroad. Go on a vacation. If you're going to take a gap year, don't use that gap year to just make yourself look better on paper. You're going to look fine on paper. Like, do something that brings you joy. It's not all about, I told you that you should set yourself up for success, but you can do that in a healthy way that doesn't make you hate everything that you're doing. So if you don't find joy in what you're doing, that volunteer opportunity that you think you have to have, or that someone somewhere told you that you have to have, do you really need it to get into whatever that next step is going to be? Probably not. It's all about how you write those application essays. You can be a better physician or a better, insert your career path here with those extra opportunities. Like, if you study abroad, you are learning about other cultures and how they deal with different things that are not something that you're used to. That is a life-changing experience that will make you just a better human being, in addition to a better career person. It's more of a do as I say, not as I did in college. Learn from my mistakes.
So you do a lot of work now on expanding accessibility and equity within the university, and I imagine that side of that as well. Was there a specific instance or experience that inspired that, or is it something that you had interest in for your life?
So it's something, the DEI work that I do, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is something that I've always been interested in, but a lot of it is also paying it forward. So I benefited from my participation in some of those sorts of organizations and those initiatives. For example, I was part of the McNair Scholars when I was in undergrad, and I was a member of an organization called North Star STEM, which is also to support minority students in education. And so I think that I had such a huge benefit and such a huge support system from those organizations that now I'll go out of my way and disrupt my work-life balance to support those initiatives here and in what I do. So for example, I'm a mentor for first-generation students through the University Multicultural Mentoring Program. I give an annual talk to my undergrad institution's McNair students every year And anybody else who wants to come, we sort of kick all of the faculty out of the room, and all the students can ask questions that they don't feel comfortable asking their mentors about. And I'm there as a resource for them. And then now professionally, I am chair of our department student services committee, which ensures equity, access, and so on for our department, for our graduate students in particular. I sit on a regional DEI committee for my professional organization, and as well as for my national professional society. And then I'm involved in a couple of national STEM education reform projects that are about DEI things. To try to spread the wealth of my hours of time. But yes, it's something I've always been interested in, and it's sort of half the interest part of just like, I want to make science and education better for everybody, but also the paying it forward because I had such a great experience in those programs.
Another pre-submitted question from Emma Thomas. What's the most unexpected way that geography impacts global health?
In all ways. Now, we like to, I mean, I'm biased, of course, because now I work in a geography department, but we like to say that geography is in everything, right? All of the things about global health happen somewhere, which is geography. So we look at spatiotemporal patterns, and I think that one of the really cool things that we can do with that approach is say, what do we know now about where a disease burden exists? Like on what population and what location? And then what's it going to look like in the future? So we can use our crystal balls of geographic information systems and project what's going to happen in the future based on climate change, patterns that we think are going to happen, educated guesses. We look at how the population is going to change, where new vectors are going to be with all those things, and we can say, all right, here's what it looks like now, here's what it's going to look like in the future with our predictions. What steps need to be taken policy-wise or infrastructure-wise so that we can prepare to mitigate the potential risk 50 years from now, 80 years from now. I think that is really, really cool.
So, like, through this people's insight class and the global planning perspective and the questions and stuff like that, there is some kind of a cultural lens that I'm seeing here.
Absolutely.
And I'm just wondering if you think that by examining a lot of these like STEM classes through a more cultural lens, that they become more accessible to maybe people that are more interested in humanities.
Oh, I certainly hope so. That is the goal. So it's really easy to think of your discipline, whatever your major is, as its own thing. We call that silos or siloing in the education world, where you're a biology student, you're only thinking about the biological facets of thing X, like a disease. But that's not true, because that disease happens in a population, in a location, in a specific geography. That population may have specific cultural history that has an impact on how the disease spreads. And so we can't look at it just through the lens of what is this virus or this pathogen doing inside of the body, because that isn't going to give us the best chance of stopping that disease. So we look at diseases in my classes through a lot of different lenses: the cultural lens, political, economic, social, plus the biology, virology of that disease itself. Because without all those different aspects, how are you going to become a well-informed scientist moving forward?
Once you like the PhD or your postdoc, do you already kind of have like a general idea of what you're going to be searching for the future?
100% no. Not at all. So I started my PhD at 21, fresh out of college, and I knew that I wanted to do science. That was about it. So the first year of my program that I was in, we did rotations. So we rotated through 3 separate labs to figure out if the mentor-mentee relationship was good and healthy and it worked for everybody involved, if the research was interesting, if those are the skills that you wanted to help you get to that next step, like the career step, and so on. So the lab that I was dead set on joining when I applied to graduate school was not the one that I joined. because it turned out that that wasn't going to work for me to get me to where I needed to go. And so I switched gears quite a bit in grad school of what I was interested in. It was all like evolution, ecology focused for me, but the actual projects that I was working on were very, very different. Went from snails and the evolution and maintenance of sex and those genes that result in sexual versus asexual reproduction to like bugs and plants and evolution of post-parasite systems.
If you could maybe talk a little bit about the GeoGators summer program in case there's any students here who want to
Thanks
get
for that
involved as
prompt.
a undergraduate research opportunity.
Yes, I run or I coordinate a summer research opportunity program called the GeoGators Summer Research Program. It is a program that runs over summer C. So you sign up for research hours, so it appears in your transcript, and you apply to work with one of our research faculty, including our MedGeo faculty. But there's a meteorology focus area in our department. There's sustainability. People who work on land cover change in Africa with conservation efforts and so on. So there's a lot of different opportunities. We're not just states and capitals. And there it is. So these are our last year opportunities. I haven't finalized the list of new opportunities yet, but this should give you an idea of the types of research that was done this past year by our students. So we know that working in a research lab can be really, really isolating for you. If you're the only undergraduate there, it's in the summertime, not many people are around. So we also do professional development as a cohort with me. So every week you get professional development from me, and those are things like, how do you apply for graduate or professional school? How do you pay for graduate or professional school? What scholarships or fellowships are out there? How to write your CV or your resume, how to write your cover letter, your statement of purpose for those applications, how to interview, and then how to make a poster. Because the last thing that you do as part of this program is do a poster presentation in our department to everybody. It's like the first week or the second week of this fall semester. And we give a poster symposium that you get to put on your newly crafted or newly updated resume, and so on. So the application's open in November, and if you apply to work on a specific project. So all of these are potential projects. That's a plague one that I'm on. And so there's lots and lots of different opportunities. You do not have to be a geography student. You don't even have to have taken a geography class. Although if you've taken a techniques class that more so aligns with the project goals, like computer science, if it's a modeling project or a coding project, a GIS class, if it's looking at making those pretty maps and that sort of analysis, et cetera, might give you a better chance of being selected. But we sort of pair the students with the research mentors. So if you're interested in that, you can send me an email, and Dr. Watson will provide my contact information. And I just send you all an email when the application's open, so you can take a more closer look at the projects that are recruiting students. Last year we had 11 students complete this program, and their work is really, really cool.
Other questions? Yeah.
Do you see yourself staying at the University of Florida, or how do you want to move forward with
What's that next step look like?
Yeah.
So I see myself staying here at least for the short term. We'll sort of see what happens next. I work with DEI things, and that focus of mine, I have to make a decision about whether or not I want that to be my primary focus. And if so, then that is difficult to do here. It's still valid and worthy to do here, but it's just a little bit more barriers that exist. So we'll see. Good question. Tough question.
Since you spent a lot of time abroad and like And learning about a lot of different cultures and like educational practices in different countries. Is there anything that you've seen abroad that you would like to see implemented here domestically or that you find like admirable, like kind of like open-ended, like if you saw any research that you thought was interesting, any like
I think it's all like structurally things that I would love to see, making higher education more accessible, aka more affordable for students that exist in other countries. I don't know if we could ever have something like that here, but wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to take out $1 bazillion in loans to get your education? And it works in other countries. We should be able to make something work here, but I'm not in a position to make those changes. Yeah, so structurally, yes. Otherwise, it's, you know, like we have to work within the boundaries of the higher education system here. Question of that?
You mentioned a lot like focusing on the future. How do you remain within the present? Focusing on what you're wanting to do right now. Like having to balance with this, but you mentioned a lot about being in the future.
Sure. So I have the inability to say no to things, which definitely plays back into my work-life balance and making it not so great. But I don't think that there is anything that I do now that is just thinking about the present. It's all about setting myself up for that next career step and making sure that if I want to take that next career step, I can. And so, yeah, there's always that look at, you know, that 5-year plan, that 10-year plan of how am I going to get to where I want to go next, even though now I've got like the last degree that I could have and that sort of thing. So if I'm working on a research project, it's the same thing, right? There is the present of I need to get this manuscript written and get this project done, but it's also the what can we build off of from here? And that's how good research is done. It's not just the one and done publication or the project is done and now I just stop thinking about it. It's the I got new data and I can make new hypotheses, new conclusions, and you know, there's always going to be that next research question. That's always thinking about the future. It can be very overwhelming to think that way, but that's how it works.
One more future related question from the pre-submitted. Florencia Merlino asks if you've ever considered returning to Chile to do research there.
My parents just got back from Chile like last week and I was there last year. But I know my food words and my shopping words really well in Spanish and I can understand fluently, but I don't know my science words well enough to consider doing a research project there where I'm the sole lead. Yeah, so like I would love to, but I don't really see it as a feasible next step for me. I would rather, if I'm going to Chile, I want to spend time with my family.
Right.
And so that's always been my focus and my highlights there of from there, it's 100% family time.
So does research in other countries tend to be in, if they don't speak, if they're not like primarily English speaking, does it tend to be in the native?
It depends. So for science, a lot of our work that's done is in English, but I feel like you're missing a huge part of the story if you don't at least attempt to learn that language. You know, how are you going to work with community members? How are you going to like fully engage in that area where you're doing the work? And I think it's a little, we run into this problem. It's sometimes alluded to as like the white coat syndrome of we have, for that example, it's Western doctors who go into another location, another country, and it's the, well, you should be doing these things because I'm a doctor and I say so, and it's better for you. But that is not respecting the cultural heritage of that location. And even though you might go in with the best of intentions, the way that that comes off might not be great. And so thinking about those different facets, I think that if you make the attempt to have some of that conversation in the native language of that country where you're doing the work, it is more authentic. It doesn't always have to be that way, but that's my viewpoint, keeping in mind that I have done very, very little international research.
Have you found any difference in your favorite Hispanic woman in your like field and if so, how did it impact that?
Sure. So as a white passing Hispanic, it is a different experience that I've had than some of my colleagues. In 2015, when I graduated with my PhD, I was one of 15 individuals of Hispanic descent that graduated with a PhD in the entirety of the United States in evolutionary biology. One of 15, both men and women. So we have a long ways to go in terms of fixing that, what we call it in the industry is the leaky pipeline, right? We're bringing in a ton of fantastic students of a wide variety of different backgrounds into college, but getting them through to the PhD stage where then they can become the faculty members, that is, we don't see the same numbers, the same percentages going through that pipeline. So yes, I have experienced some things that have happened that are not great. And I'm now in a position and confident enough in my voice to be able to bring those points up, that things that make me uncomfortable, right? Like when we were filling out our annual program report and someone said, oh, well, you don't count towards our diversity reporting. Like, yes, I do. Thank you. And here, I see that now as a chance for educating my colleagues or the people that I'm in conversation with. But I was not that confident to even broach the subject when I was in my PhD, or definitely not when I was in undergrad. So I think it comes with time, unfortunately, and that's another reason why I'm sort of committed to the accessibility and making sure that the classroom and the university and sort of education as a whole is open and welcoming to everybody. It's because of some of those not so great experiences that I've had. Yeah.
So like, what do you think come up with that or like research that?
So designing that first research question, you gotta be interested in it, right? If you're just trying to, someone gives you a topic, like you've got a class presentation or a class paper that you have to write and they give you a topic, that can be really hard to do because if you're not super invested in it, then it's just like, oh, okay, cool, I just gotta write this paper. But if it's something that is exciting and interesting to you, that will increase the buy-in and help you find that one thing that is of interest. Unfortunately, it's a lot of reading to figure out what's been done, where the gap is in the knowledge base, and you have to keep reading because new science comes out every day. And so you're not starting from scratch because you're building on the science that already exists. You have to know what science already exists first in order to make that next step. But the cool thing is that a lot of those papers that you're reading to figure out where the knowledge gap is are saying, hey, if we could take this one more step further, here's what we would do. But we think this is a really cool avenue of exploration, but we can't do that within the scope of like the data that we've collected or our experimental design, what have you. They've given you ideas. And then you can sort of mesh them all together and find out what works for you. A lot of reading, so lots of reading. Which is also why I can give you all the facts about like one species of tick.
What do you think should be the deciding factors for wanting to get a PhD? Because I feel like there's like you can, of course, it's like other ways to go into research, but I feel like for PhD there's like once you get it, like you're just completely locked into that. And there's like
Not necessarily. So once you have a PhD, you don't have to go the academic route. We're actually seeing a lot more people go out of academics than stay in after they get their PhDs. But that deciding factor point is very individual. If you want a job or a career that requires a PhD, then get a PhD. But if you don't have to have a PhD, don't do it. It's not a fun time in your life, right? Like the research is exciting, but it is 4 to 6 or more years of you don't get paid well. You have to relocate usually and pick up your whole family and move. And they're long hours. It's tough intellectually, but it can be very stimulating and very rewarding. It's just making sure that that balance is what you want and it's going to help you get to where you want to go. So again, very, very individualized. I wrote a lot of pros and cons charts when I was deciding on where I wanted to go. But for me, my mom has a PhD and a couple of master's degrees and didn't end up, she worked from home. She was self-employed. She didn't need those things, but in my family, right, she wasn't born in this country. And so coming to the US, that was an opportunity that then existed for her. That was something that she felt that she had to pursue. So my upbringing was, you finish your bachelor's degree, you get a PhD. That was the only pathway that I knew was available to me. I didn't know that I could leave after my bachelor's degree and get a good job and be as successful as I wanted to be. And so again, if you don't have to get that PhD, consider a master's degree first. Make sure that it's something that you actually enjoy.
And then as you do research with a PhD, you can do research with a doctorate in medical sense.
Yes,
right?
yeah. Yes, it is, for the MD route, if you want to do research, it becomes a little bit more tricky because you're being trained in how to be a physician that interacts with patients. But there are programs that are available that you can do basic science research in a medical facility or a medical capacity. There are also programs called MD PhD programs they're a lot because you're getting both degrees and both of them are a huge time investment. But they do exist if that's something that you truly want to pursue. I know a couple of people who have gone that route. And it's hats off to them because that's a lot to handle.
You're close to time. We have time for maybe one more question if anyone has a final thought that they want. If not, oh, yes.
Sorry. So you just talked about how, and this was earlier, about how when you were getting that more, how like physics for you is like non-responsibility. Like for me, I struggle a lot with math, and I'm in like a STEM course. I was just wondering if you felt like when taking physics or taking those classes that you weren't yourself to, if you had any doubts about what path you were on and how you dealt with those.
I started college as a biomedical engineering student because that was the thing that made the most sense with my interest in math and biology. And then I took physics. My first semester of college, I thought that my advisor had my best interests at heart and said that, hey, you tested into Calc 3, you'll be fine in second year calc-based physics. I had never taken physics before. I kind of knew that gravity was a thing. That's about it. So I could derive those equations, but I couldn't apply those equations. So I failed physics, got an actual F or an E here in physics. So you can still be successful, even if you fail a class or if you get something other than an A. And that made me change my mind about what I was interested in. It also made me change my mind about how I do planning now for my 5-year plus plan. And yeah, so physics was not my thing. Physics is scary to me because I sort of developed that mental block, but I ended up retaking physics over a summer, and passed it. Not well, but I passed it. And yeah, it's just a persistence thing, right? There's some classes, some hurdles that you have to overcome to get the degree, to get to where you want to go. But I also researched this thing called growth mindset. And so if you go into a situation where you say, I'm not good at math, then you have no opportunity for growth because you've already told yourself that you can't grow in your skill set. And so having that growth mindset of, I'm not good at math, but if I practice, I can become better at math. That is a really big psychological change that happens in your brain chemistry, actually, and can allow you the room for forgiveness for yourself if things don't go quite right, but it also gives you that opportunity for growth. So just change your way of thinking. It's not that you're not good at math, it's just that you don't have the same level of practice as other people.
And on that note, I think we do have to wrap up, but thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate all your wisdom.
Yeah, if you have
And
follow-up
advice.
questions, have office hours all day Wednesdays. If you want to just drop by, I'm in Turlington. And Dr. Watson will provide my contact information.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much.
Yeah.